I remember there was a video of him throwing out $2,000 cash on his balcony, just throwing it out. He was making so much money he didn't give a
Junior Maxwell II, better known in the rap world as Fetty Wap, pleaded guilty to conspiring to distribute over 500 grams of cocaine.
You think Fetty Wap couldn't have put the type of money he getting into one of these apps?
Fetty Wap got caught up in a drug deal that turned deadly, and the way it all went down has people shocked. What was supposed to be a simple move suddenly spiraled into something way darker, and nobody saw it coming. They thought it was routine.
I'm sure Fetty could still get $20,000 a show, but that ain't enough for the lifestyle he created.
Just another play for quick cash, in and out, no noise. But somewhere between the exchange and those headlights pulling up, everything flipped in an instant. 1 second it was business, the next it was chaos, and the whole situation went left fast. Now look at this, $22 million sitting in the account. Before the fame, before the charts, before the world even knew his name, Willie Jr. Maxwell II was out in Paterson, New Jersey, really in the field. No deals, no big stages, no spotlight, just a young guy from the trenches moving how he had to move. The block gave him lessons and he followed them.
I don't gotta touch this shit. I'm gonna make a play, buy some bags, put these on.
Pushing product just to survive and keep money flowing. He never tried to erase that past either. No fake image, no cover-up, no pretending. He took those real-life moments, added melody, and flipped it into one of the biggest hits of 2014. Trap Queen was not just music, it was real life. A raw story about love and hustle inside a trap house built on loyalty and risk. The streets felt it instantly because it was honest, and when it hit hard. It hit on a whole different level.
Remember when Fetty was on fire? When Trap Queen was out and that whole album had like 5 singles on it?
By 2015, Trap Queen shot all the way up to #2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed glued to the charts for months. Radio could not stop spinning it, and streaming numbers were going crazy. Then the debut album dropped and proved this was no accident, no one-hit moment fading away. You could see it clearly, and even Boozy spoke on it, saying he remembered exactly how that run looked from the outside. 5 singles off one debut album. That is not normal at all. That is not luck, that is domination. This was not a case of one song carrying everything while the rest faded out. 5 records charting at once means 5 different streams of money all hitting at the same time. Publishing checks, performance money, sync deals coming in, and most importantly, that kind of name power that lets you walk into any deal and set your own price. Every show, every festival, every club booking, it all stacked up behind a catalog packed with hits. And the way he was spending, that told the whole story about how fast the money was coming in.
Because once you spend all your money and you got to go back to what you know.
2 racks tossed right off the balcony. Not for a video, not for attention, just because the money was flowing that heavy. $2,000 gone in seconds on a random day just because the moment felt right. And Fetty himself made it clear that number was real. No filter at all. You could tell he had run that number through his head over and over before even saying it out loud. $22 million, all sitting in one account. At the height of the Trap Queen run, the same guy from Paterson who once worked the block was now staring at a bank balance most people cannot even imagine. And this was not money just sitting still either. It was climbing every single day. Royalty checks stacking up, show money clearing nonstop, everything hitting at once. We are talking about serious motion. $100,000 every single day. Not weekly, not monthly, daily. That breaks down to about $36.5 million a year. Those are numbers you expect from tech giants or hedge fund bosses.
It happens every day. And again, that's what I said. We don't know what to do with the money when we get it.
Not someone in their 20s coming out of a place like Paterson, a city people overlook like it is invisible. But this was real, and the proof was right there in the account. Every morning, he could wake up, check his phone, and see that number staring back at him. But here is where it gets tricky. When you start seeing $100,000 a day, your mindset shifts. That level becomes your normal, your baseline, the minimum you expect. And when the music industry does what it always does, switch focus and move on. That number does not stay the same. And that is when everything starts to change. And that gap between what it used to be and what it turned into. That kind of drop can really mess with your head in ways most people will never understand. If you never felt that kind of high, you cannot fully grasp the fall that comes after it. For Fetty, the shift started creeping in around the end of 2017. It was not some instant crash either. It was slow, quiet, almost sneaky. The kind of decline that keeps you holding on, thinking maybe tomorrow it flips back. Maybe the industry remembers, maybe the calls start flooding in again. But the numbers were telling a different story. 40, then another 40, then again, then 30. You did not need anyone to explain it. The trend was clear. That daily flow was sliding down, and it was not stopping on its own. Then that one call came through and made everything real. A promoter offering $50,000 to book Fetty Wap for a show. Now that might sound big to most people, but not long before that, his price was way higher, in a whole different bracket.
You accumulate so much income when you're hot.
When the market starts putting your name next to 50,000 per show, that is not just a number. That is a message loud and clear.
And even though you're not hot anymore, that's still residual income that come in. You still do shows, you still got a face card, you still can touch money.
By the end of 2017, just 3 years removed from Trap Queen, 3 years after the $22 million peak, the $100,000 a day flow, and money being thrown around without a second thought, the momentum was fading, and he felt every bit of it. DJ Academics later broke situations like this down in detail, explaining how fast success can turn into a financial trap for artists when the numbers start shifting. And even when the spotlight cools off, the money does not just disappear overnight, but it definitely does not hit the same anymore. The face card was still valid, the shows were still getting booked, and money was still coming in. But the weight behind it, it was not the same anymore. By normal standards, he was far from broke. But compared to who Fetty Wap used to be, compared to $22 million sitting in the account and $100,000 hitting every single day, it was a completely different reality. The gap between those two versions of him felt massive, like a canyon you cannot just step across, and inside that gap is where things really started to fall apart. The rise and the slow fade only tell part of the story, because to understand how he ended up where he did, you have to look at everything the money built around him while it was pouring in. It was not always about blowing cash for no reason. A lot of it went to people around him, to the lifestyle he created, to the responsibilities that come with being the one who made it out and had to carry others with him. Everyone who did not make it was now connected to him in some way. And spending at that level is not always reckless or careless. Sometimes it is about loyalty, about community, about being the one everyone depends on. But here is the part that hits hard. The account does not care why the money is leaving. Whether it is love, loyalty, or pressure, the result is the same, and the balance keeps dropping all the same. The money starts moving in every direction. It goes into everything the new life demands non-stop. And the real issue, not a single dollar is building more money. Nothing is compounding. Nothing is set up to keep generating income on its own. So when the music slows down, that cash leaves, and it does not come back. That question hits heavy every single time. $22 million. Because real money, when it is handled right, does not just disappear like that.
I'm sure Fetty could still get $20,000 a show, but that ain't enough for the lifestyle he created.
If it is placed into anything creating passive income, that kind of money becomes a safety net the industry cannot take away, no matter how quiet things get. But thinking like that takes knowledge. It takes financial awareness that most young people from places like Paterson, New Jersey, are not being taught before success hits them fast. One record can flip your whole life overnight, and there is no manual that comes with it. So when the daily income dropped from $100,000 to $40,000, then to $30,000, everything built around that bigger number was still there, still active, still draining money. The cars still needed insurance. The home still needed upkeep. The people depending on him still needed support. Nothing slowed down on the expense side. That is where the real pressure builds. The lifestyle was designed for a certain level of income, but that income was no longer matching it. The structure stayed big, but the engine behind it got weaker. DJ Academics broke it down before. Once you pass your peak, the show circuit changes and everything starts looking different whether you are ready for it or not. The leftover value is still real. Do not get it twisted. Fetty Wap is still a name that can move tickets and bring people out. That face card still opens doors and gets attention. But the price per show, that shifted. Wherever it once sat at the peak, it is not living there anymore. Now you have two different speeds clashing. The income is slowing down, but the lifestyle is still moving full speed ahead. One is easing off, the other is not. And that gap right there is where risky thinking starts creeping in.
So you like, I'm gonna take my last, I'm gonna put it here. I got my little cousin, my little homie, them.
Boosie had already seen this pattern play out so many times, especially down in Louisiana. He watched what happens when rap money slows up, but the lifestyle keeps stretching further than it should. And then it comes back to one simple idea, back to what you know. That line right there holds everything together in this story. Because before the fame, before the millions, before any of that, Willie Maxwell knew Paterson, New Jersey like the back of his hand. He understood that environment, the way it worked, the way money moved there. That kind of knowledge sticks with you. The same way someone understands their regular job, he understood the streets. But Boosie pointed out something important. What made Fetty's situation different from the average rapper going back to old habits was how high he had climbed before the fall. Most people who end up back in those situations never reach that top level to begin with. The music never fully replaced what the streets once brought in. So, for a lot of people, going back was never a long journey. It was always right there waiting. But Fetty's situation, that was different on a whole other level. He had already reached the top. He touched $22 million. He lived what it feels like to see $100,000 hitting every single day. That kind of money changes how you think, how you move, how you see everything, and then to drop all the way back down, ending up in a position similar to someone who never even got a deal, that is a drastic fall. From the West Coast all the way to Long Island, the story started shifting behind the scenes. Somewhere between late 2017, when he first noticed the music money slowing down, and the summer of 2019, a decision got made. Nobody knows the exact moment, the exact words, or what flipped in his mind. That switch from "I need to fix this" to "I know how to fix this" was never recorded publicly. But what is on record? That tells a serious story. Federal agents put together a case that the Eastern District of New York sealed in October 2021, and it was not small at all. Starting around June 2019 and running through June 2020, Willie Jr. Maxwell II was allegedly involved in a drug trafficking operation. Not something minor either. This was structured, organized, and spread across multiple states. We are talking about supply chains moving from the West Coast all the way to Long Island and New Jersey, all connected in one operation. This operation was not sloppy or random. It had structure, planning, and enough moving parts to catch the attention of federal investigators for over a year. Fetty Wap and 5 other individuals were accused of sourcing large amounts of narcotics from the West Coast and moving them all the way across the country, distributing them through Long Island and back into New Jersey. And the people involved? That is where it gets even more serious. One name that stood out was Anthony Saya, a former New Jersey corrections officer who was allegedly working as a courier. That is not by chance. That is strategy. Putting someone with that kind of background and position gives the operation a layer of cover and access that most street-level players would never have. This was not basic movement either. The logistics were detailed. Authorities said the operation used the United States Postal Service along with vehicles that had hidden compartments built into them for transport. Using the postal system like that is a known smuggling method. High volume, low visibility, and hard to catch without inside information. And those hidden compartments? That is not beginner-level work. That takes planning, equipment, and vehicles modified in a way that will not raise suspicion during normal checks. None of this points to a first-time setup. This was organized, calculated, and built to move serious weight. And it was not just limited to one substance either. The pipeline included more than just cocaine. Prosecutors claimed the operation was moving serious weight, over 100 kilograms, more than 220 pounds, including cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, and crack cocaine. That is not small scale by any stretch. And the mention of fentanyl? That part hits different. In federal court, fentanyl charges carry major weight because of how dangerous it is, and the penalties reflect that urgency in a way other charges often do not. When it came to Fetty Wap's alleged role, prosecutors did not leave much room for doubt. They described him as a kilogram-level redistributor, someone accused of personally moving and reselling large amounts of narcotics. DJ Academics had spoken before about how some artists slide from music into the street game, breaking down the mindset behind it, and the way he explained it lines up closely with what was described in the federal case. When you hear that logic out loud, it almost sounds simple. Use your own money. Keep everything within your circle. Whether it is actual family or people you trust like family, the idea stays the same. Buy the product, move the product, keep the profit tight within your group. And the math behind it? It is not complicated at all. At that level, the margins are huge. The kind of capital needed to even step into that space was something someone like Fetty had already seen before, especially after touching millions and understanding how money can move. For someone with Fetty's background in Paterson, that kind of knowledge was already there long before the music ever took off. It was part of what he knew, part of how he came up. But when investigators finally made their move, what they found made things extremely difficult to argue against. This was not built on guesses or weak connections. Search warrants reportedly turned up around $1.5 million in cash, 16 kilograms of cocaine, 2 kilograms of heroin, fentanyl pills, and multiple firearms. That is not just circumstantial evidence. That is physical proof stacked high. The kind of evidence that puts serious pressure on any defense before a case even reaches a jury. And then came the moment that shocked everyone. On October 28, 2021, federal prosecutors in the Eastern District of New York unsealed the indictment and moved in on Fetty Wap. He was not at home, not laying low, not anywhere off the radar. He was at Citi Field in Queens, right in the middle of one of the biggest hip-hop festivals in the country. Just minutes before he was set to perform at Rolling Loud, he was arrested, right there, in the spotlight. The charges? They included allegations of distributing over 100 kilograms of cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl. Those numbers are not small, and they are not close to anything considered minor activity. That level points to a large-scale operation. Authorities described a system moving substances across the country, organized with multiple people involved, including a corrections officer acting as a courier and modified vehicles handling transport behind the scenes. This was the level the government came with, serious, heavy, and impossible to ignore. Reports coming out of the federal courthouse made it clear just how high the stakes were. Fetty Wap was facing at least 5 years in prison after pleading guilty to a federal drug conspiracy charge. And that 5 years, that was not the final number, that was just the floor. The mandatory minimum set by federal law, meaning it could go even higher depending on how things played out. The plea officially came on August 22nd, 2022. But by the time that happened, things had already taken another unexpected turn. The bail situation? That went left. And not because of drugs, but because of a FaceTime call that somehow made its way onto the government's radar. That moment in court stood out. The bail revocation became its own chapter in this story. It was separate from the charges, but it revealed a lot about the situation he was navigating at the time. After the Rolling Loud arrest in October 2021, Fetty had actually secured release. In November 2021, he got out on a $500,000 bond, placed under strict pretrial conditions like most federal cases require. These conditions are not optional. They are designed to make sure the person shows up to court and does not create further issues while the case is active. But things did not hold steady. By August 2022, when sentencing was approaching, he was no longer free. Prosecutors brought forward new information that led to him being taken back into custody. The allegation they presented was direct, detailed, and impossible to overlook. Fetty Wap was accused of pulling out a firearm during a FaceTime call, on video, with his face, his hands, and the weapon all clearly visible, and making repeated threats to take someone's life. This was not a misunderstanding or words taken out of context. It was described as direct, repeated threats made while holding a weapon, all happening during a video call while he was already out on federal bond for a serious drug case carrying a 5-year mandatory minimum. That kind of situation does not stay quiet. The government found out, which means someone on that call or someone connected to it made sure that information reached federal authorities. This was not something agents just stumbled across during their investigation. It was brought directly to them, and once it landed, the response was immediate. The judge did not take long to act. By August 2022, Fetty Wap was taken back into custody. No bail, no second chance at pretrial release. From that moment forward, he remained behind bars, going straight from bond revocation to sentencing without regaining freedom. When the plea deal finally came through, it was a step down from what he was originally facing. The initial indictment carried the possibility of a life sentence if fully pursued. But the agreement reduced it to conspiracy to distribute and possess 500 grams or more of cocaine. Still serious, still carrying a mandatory minimum of 5 years, but not the life-ending outcome that was originally on the table. Sentencing took place on May 24, 2023. U.S. District Judge Joanna Siebert handed down a 6-year federal prison sentence, 1 year above the minimum, followed by 5 years of supervised release after that. A heavy ending to a situation that had been building for years. The judge did not just randomly go a year above the minimum. There was context behind that decision. Prosecutors pointed directly to his rap lyrics, arguing that they promoted and glamorized the drug trade. That kind of argument has been showing up more and more in federal cases involving hip-hop artists, and courts have been willing to consider it. No matter where people stand on the First Amendment side of things, it still had an impact here. Think about the timeline. Just 6 years after having $22 million in the account, after dropping 5 hit singles off a debut album, after those moments of throwing money off balconies and waking up to $100,000 days, the situation had completely flipped. The music, it was still out there. Streaming numbers still running, royalties still coming in quietly in the background while everything else played out. But the person behind all of it, he was on his way to FCY Sandstone in Minnesota to serve his sentence. DJ Academics had already spoken on this kind of situation before, breaking down the mindset and pressure that can lead artists into decisions like this. And one point stands out heavy. We do not always know what to do with that kind of money when it comes fast. That is not just about one person. It speaks to a bigger issue. Sudden wealth, no financial guidance, no real structure around it, and no long-term support system can turn a win into something unstable real quick. The wake-up call hit different. FCI Sandstone sits deep in the pine forests of northern Minnesota. It is a low-security federal facility, the kind typically assigned to someone facing a first-time drug conspiracy charge without a violent conviction attached. But do not get it confused. That is still federal prison. Inside those walls, everything runs on their time, not yours. The money, the fame, the streaming numbers, the lifestyle, it all gets left at the door. None of that follows you in, and none of it holds any weight once you are there. And that kind of environment forces a level of clarity most people never experience. When everything tied to the public image of Willie Maxwell gets stripped away, all that is left is the private reality. Just him, time, and silence, something he had not really faced since before Trap Queen changed everything. But he did not let that time go to waste. He got involved in rehabilitation programs, stayed active, and signed up for educational courses. He worked within the system, staying consistent and focused. Because of that effort, he earned good time credits under the First Step Act, which rewards inmates for participating in programs and maintaining good conduct. And that made a real difference. On January 8, 2026, after serving roughly 3 years of a 6-year sentence, about 11 months earlier than expected, Fetty Wap was released from FCY Sandstone. But it was not a full return to freedom just yet. He transitioned into home and community confinement, still under supervision, still restricted, but no longer behind those walls. The supervised release conditions Judge Siebert said at sentencing are still active. Regular drug testing, strict limits on alcohol or any intoxicants unless prescribed, and rules around movement and who he can be around. All of that stays in place until around November 2026. So the legal situation is not fully over yet. But the prison chapter? That part is done. And now comes the bigger lesson. Respect the money. Not just getting it and letting it fly in every direction, but actually understanding what it means. Because money is not just numbers on a screen. It represents options, security, and long-term stability if it is handled right. But it can also disappear fast if there is no structure behind it. When you strip away the image, the flashy lifestyle, and everything that comes with showing wealth, what you are left with is the real relationship between a person and their money. And there is a clear pattern here. Money, relationships, opportunities. 3 things that came into Fetty Wap's life at a level most people will never experience. But those same 3 things moved just as fast as they came in. Not because he was the only one making mistakes or thinking short-term, but because the system that created that level of success did not come with guidance on how to maintain it. At his peak, his booking rate was around $250,000 per show. That was the level his name carried at its hottest. And the idea now? That numbers like that could come back again. But only if the version of him stepping back into the world is moving smarter, thinking different, and no longer tied to the same habits that once came with watching that account climb every single day. That drop from $100,000 a day to $40,000, then down to $30,000, set the stage for everything that followed. Those numbers did not just change his income, they influenced the moves he made after. And when you really look at it, it reframes everything. That 6-year sentence at FCY Sandstone can almost be seen as more than just punishment. It was a forced slowdown, because the pace he was moving at, it was pushing him towards something even worse than a prison cell. And the real pull here was not desperation, it was easy money. Fetty Wap was not struggling to survive in 2019. This was not about basic needs. This was about the difference between fast, familiar money and the slow, uncertain grind of rebuilding a music career from a lower level. The street side? That math is quick, direct, and something he already understood deeply. The music industry? That is unpredictable. Delays, contracts, trends shifting. You cannot control most of it. And when someone's foundation comes from the streets, when that is the first system they ever learned, that pullback toward what feels natural is strong. It is not something you can just brush off or ignore. It is real, and it matters. So when the income slows down but the lifestyle does not adjust, the setup is already there. The streets feel familiar. The move gets made, and then the federal system steps in. And unlike anything on the streets, the federal system moves slow, patient, and calculated. It builds the case quietly and then acts at the exact moment it chooses. People online might twist parts of the story, stretch details, or add extra drama, but when you look at the verified facts, the pattern itself is real. This is someone who built something major from nothing, watched it rise, then saw it slowly fall apart. The choices that followed led straight to a federal prison sentence. But he served that time, earned an early release, and now he's back outside with everything still wide open. The big question now? What happens next? Can Fetty Wap really stay focused, move smarter, and avoid slipping back into old patterns? Or is trouble always going to be right there waiting for him? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think about this. And if you want more breakdowns like this, hit like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can tap in. Click the next video on your screen and keep watching.